meeting of the subcommittee for ARPA funds to order. And glad to see everyone here today. We have many presenters, about 8 today. We should finish 4:15, 4:30, or 9 or 9:30. Hopefully the earlier number. But first, we will hear from the Mississippi Institutions of Higher Learning. Dr. Al Rankins will present for them. Dr. Rankins, we're glad you're here today, and we look forward to what you have to say. The podium.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman Polk, and members of the committee for the opportunity to speak today about how ARPA funds could help address pressing needs within our university system. Well, I know that there's no shortage of ideas of how to spend these funds or allocate them across the state. If you were to total all the wish lists floating around the state, I'm confident that this committee could figure out how to spend these funds 3 times over. When we prepare IHL's annual appropriation and bond requests, we do so by looking at historical trends and develop our request based on what we reasonably expect to receive. However, with the unprecedented opportunity presented by the ARPA funding, we took a different approach. I asked the President and Chancellor to review the full scope of infrastructure, broadband, and deferred maintenance needs at their institutions and develop a list of projects that give you a glimpse of the significant needs on our campuses. We developed a proposal using the same formula we use in our annual bond request to allocate the funds to our various institutions. We believe the projects qualify for ARPA funding, and these one-time funds would have a lasting impact on Mississippi's public universities. As you consider where our universities fit in the overall plan for allocating these funds, please know that any amount that you invest in our universities to address these critical needs will improve our campus physical plants, enhance sustainability, and improve the quality of the campus environment for our students, faculty, staff, and visitors for years to come. As you know, our public universities function more like small municipalities, much different than other state agencies. In addition, to meet our educational mission and maintain the technology that supports it, the universities must operate 24 hours a day with housing, food service, security, healthcare, and road and utility maintenance. Some also must manage their own water systems and emergency response. With 1,579 buildings encompassing 40.5 million gross square feet and more than 12,000 acres of land, keeping up with routine maintenance is a constant challenge. The universities have proposed projects to expand and strengthen broadband reliability, enhance access to and conserve clean water, upgrade sewer systems and stormwater drainage, improve ventilation systems, and address healthcare needs. As I mentioned, we believe these projects are eligible for ARPA funding based on the guidance published by the U.S. Department of Treasury. We're prepared to refine the list as needed as the U.S. Treasury updates the guidelines. First, enhancing the reliability of broadband coverage, especially on our campuses in rural areas, is mission critical for our universities. Our education and research missions are increasingly dependent on fast, reliable broadband service. With that comes a growing need for strong cybersecurity defense to protect privacy and confidentiality of personal and research data. 6 institutions have proposed broadband projects to expand reliable broadband in areas where it is lacking and to build backup capacity to support campus operations. Secondly, on many campuses, the water and sewer infrastructure is more than 40 years old. Keeping these old systems functioning is taxing for facility staff and expensive for our universities. Severe weather, like the winter freeze earlier this year, exacerbates the problem and highlights the need for renewed investment in more modern water and sewer systems. The projects include development of a potable water contingency plan for Jackson State University and a water infiltration system to assist JSU in managing issues arising from the current City of Jackson water challenges. Alcorn State University's proposal also includes a potable water contingency plan to provide a new well shared with the City of Lorman in case of failures in the main water source. This project will build upon your prior investment in the water system at Alcorn. Mississippi State is proposing enhancements to its ice plant, which generates and delivers chilled water for HVAC cooling systems throughout its Starkville campus. And the Medical Center are also proposing the construction of new water wells. Valley is proposing upgrades to its wastewater collection and treatment system. Thirdly, managing stormwater runoff is important to campus sustainability efforts and to protecting the state's investment. Flooding from improper or failing drainage systems damages parking areas and threatens buildings in low-lying areas. The University of Southern Mississippi has proposed a project to address the storm drainage system for the Hillcrest Residence Hall parking lot. The current piping system is in poor condition and sometimes causes sinkholes to open in the parking lot. Has also proposed projects to increase pipe capacity for more efficient drainage of stormwater. Valley has also proposed upgrades to its stormwater collection system. Fourthly, enhancing ventilation in indoor spaces improves water quality for students, faculty, staff, and visitors to our campuses. And it's important in mitigating the spread of germs and allergens in campus facilities. Several institutions are proposing ventilation improvements to improve air filtration in older buildings. Lastly, while much of our proposal is focused on infrastructure needs, 4 institutions are also supporting projects where ARPA funding can be used to invest in supporting public health. Mississippi University for Women is proposing using their entire allocation to expand their College of Nursing and Health Sciences. Their proposal will help address the ongoing shortage of nurses in our state by enabling MUW to enroll more students in the nursing program and graduate more nurses for our state's workforce. Delta State University and the University of Mississippi propose using ARPA funds to expand and upgrade their campus healthcare facilities to better meet the healthcare needs of their students, faculty, and staff. The Medical Center proposes using funds to establish an inpatient adolescents behavioral health unit that is much needed in our state. Chairman Polk, since our time is limited, I will not try to review all the projects submitted by our universities, but I think you have an idea of the types of initiatives where your investment of ARPA funds can make a difference. Thank you to the committee for the opportunity to speak today and for all you have done and continue to do to support our public universities. Senator Polk, I'll be happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Dr. Rankins. Members with questions? Okay. Senator Hopson.
Thank you, Senator Polk. Dr. Rankins, this question is really not just for you, it's for any other presenter that will be here today. I want to make sure, have you vetted, or has the IHL, have they vetted all the projects on this list to make sure that they would qualify, or you believe they would qualify under the proposal and the regulations for ARP?
Yes, sir, Senator Hopson.
Okay, and the second part would be, and this is something I'm for all those that are coming after him, just, I would ask the same question, be prepared to answer this. I say that the total request is 200 million. Let's just say hypothetically, we had $50 million that the committee determines and the legislature determines that would go to IHL, essentially 1/4. Have you prioritized these? And I'm just picking that number. That's totally hypothetical, so don't run off and think that 50 million is a number, because I have no idea. But have you prioritized your projects within IHL? So if we get to the point early in the session, very early in the session, and you've got to get with Senator Polk to say, here's where we think, if you're going to give IHL roughly this amount of money, here's what we think the priority projects are that you need to fund.
We have not done so at this point, but we do understand that and are prepared to do so, because we understand the process, and our requested amount may not be the amount that's allocated, but we have a good starting point, knowing the list of projects, and we'll go back to the table and make adjustments to fit within whatever range of funding that the legislature makes available to our system.
Okay. And again, for others that are presenting, I would just recommend that you also do this, prioritize. I don't mean to pick on you, Dr. Rankins, but obviously if we get to a point where the dollars are limited, you need to be getting with Senator Polk and the members of the committee. And I'm not on the committee, but I am here. Senator Polk's gracious enough to allow me to ask a question or two. Just be prepared to give him or the committee the priority projects so that we at least know. And I'm, I wouldn't guarantee, I'm just going to speak for myself. I mean, I certainly would give deference to priorities that each of the agencies submit, but it may be that as it goes through the legislative process, you find that maybe something that's a priority for that agency or commission may not be one of the ones that gets through, but something else does. But anyway, just wanted you to be aware of that. Thank you, Dr. Rankins, Commissioner, and Senator Polk.
Thank you, Senator. Other questions? Senator Butler.
And the time and given to utilize these funds.
You're referring to the state stimulus funds that were distributed to the agencies, including ours.
Yes.
There weren't any underlying problems that I can think of that I would recommend to this body. We have a presence here during the legislative process, and we have staff available to speak with legislative staff and leaders and other members. So, I can't think of any underlying problems that I would like to bring forward to this committee.
Thank you.
I have one question that'll probably lead to two or three more, but when you came up with a system of basically giving a % to each university as they got in bond funding, are there any projects that you can think of, following on Senator Hopson's question about prioritizing? Would you look at completing projects, or would you look more at funding a little of everything? What do you think your board's feeling would be on trying to complete projects or not fund any of the projects totally?
Well, I think the priority for us, Senator Polk, would be being able to complete projects, because these are one-time funds. Because if you take the approach of a little bit of money for a lot of projects, then you're faced with having to come back in subsequent years and try to find a source for completing those projects out. So from a priority standpoint, it would be to be able to fully fund a particular project.
Okay, thank you. One more chance, members. Senator Parks.
did some portion. Would you, and you may not complete some projects, but you could give some universities the opportunity to some type of match funding so that it potentially they could complete projects. Is that a thought, or has there been any discussion on that?
There's not been any discussion on that to this point, Senator Parks, but, depending on the nature and the scope of the project, I think there could be some opportunities there, but that opportunity may not be there for every project.
Certainly. And this is just a curiosity, and I'm sorry to take up the time, but on the broadband, I guess I would ask the questioner Bode to suggest that we're about to receive another 100, and I believe 186 million in the state. Would our universities not seek part of that money as part of this funding potentially, or would you not be eligible? I guess that's the question.
I would have to look at the source of the funding to determine whether we would be eligible, but certainly if we are eligible for the funding, we would try to seek some of those funds.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator Michel.
Thank you. Dr. Rankins, from testimony we heard at our last meeting, we feel like that if the funds aren't expended within the 5 years, then it would fall as an obligation on the state and obviously bonding capacity of the state. So on some of these projects that were quite larger, like a supplemental health care facility and some of the large projects, would you be able to let us know if there's been any pre-engineering design work done or architectural work? Could it be possible that some of these projects were already on the drawing board and would be farther along in the process? Because what I would fear is that we wouldn't be able to complete the project within the 5 years, and we could possibly leave ARPA funds on the table and then obligate the state with additional bond funding. And if they were already pre-engineered or had made some progress, that might help us know whether we could complete it in 5 years.
It's my understanding that these projects have not been pre-engineered at this point, that these are, new projects that we feel like would fit within the guidance of the ARPA funding.
Thank you.
Senator Williams.
Do you feel that these projects could be engineered and completed within that 5-year threshold?
Yes.
I mean, to qualify
I
for
do.
ARPA, I would think that should be a restraint on the funds.
Yes, I do think these projects could be completed within 5 years.
All right, thank you. Dr. Rankins, thank you for being here today, and we look forward to working with you some more.
Thank you, Senator Polk. Thank you to the rest of the committee for your time.
Just so the audience knows, we had microphone trouble. Something blew up about 20 minutes before the meeting started. So we're having to share microphones, and it's making it a little difficult, but we apologize for that. Next on the agenda is the Mississippi Community College Board, represented by Kel Smith, the interim director. And I believe your board president may be here too. Is that right? Would you like to introduce him?
Mr. John Pygott, our board chair, is here with us today. He's from Picayune.
Welcome. Glad to have you here. Okay, you may begin, Kel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I feel like Dr. Rankins he and I may have been meeting together because our talking points are a lot alike with our ideas that we've come up with. So good afternoon, everyone. My name's Kel Smith, and I currently serve as the interim executive director of the Mississippi Community College Board. This is a position I've held since July. I typically handle communications and legislative issues for the system and the agency, so y'all have probably seen me around before. So in addition to Mr. Pygott, I would like to acknowledge Dr. Jay Allen, president of Itawamba Community College. He also is here in attendance with us today. He's the only community college president here today. On behalf of the 15 community colleges, thank you, Chairman Polk and members of the committee for allowing me to briefly speak to you today about 3 requests community colleges have when you begin the process of distributing the $1.8 billion in ARPA funds. We know this is a difficult time for y'all, or a difficult task for y'all, with so many requests that will be coming forth today, tomorrow, and in the future. Before I talk about a few of our ARPA needs, I'd briefly like to give an update on the fall semester. Our preliminary headcount enrollment was about 64,000 students. I'm happy to report that the semester has either ended for some community colleges while others are preparing for finals. While there were COVID cases on each of our campuses, the numbers were not high enough to shut any of our programs down, so we're very thankful for that. It's important to note that each of our campuses continue to stress the importance of safe practices to reduce the number of COVID cases. In 2020, more than 186,000 students received education or training from a community college, and 16,000 students earned more than 20,000 degrees or certificates. So in spite of all the issues with the pandemic, we're able to continue to educate, train, and graduate our citizens. So, as is the case with most every state entity, the community colleges continue to deal with COVID-related issues. The main thing being providing a safe learning environment for our students and faculty. That being said, I would like to take a moment to briefly discuss 3 ARPA requests from the community colleges. In front of you are 2 handouts that I'll speak about today. The first being a PowerPoint presentation, and the second being a detailed list of projects provided by each community college. The first item that we would like for you to consider is funding for water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. Each of our community colleges maintain campuses that date back more than 80 years. Collectively, they have hundreds of buildings on their campuses and all of the infrastructure that goes with the community college to maintain as well. As such, the community colleges have identified approximately $54.6 million in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure needs. Like I said, I'm not going to go into detail, but each community college has provided requests they would like for consideration. Examples of these needs include wastewater management, water usage control, and water quality maintenance and broadband improvements. Typical appropriations and bonds have not been enough to cover these costs in the past. However, these are allowable expenses under the ARPA guidelines. Like Dr. Rankin said earlier, community college campuses are like small municipalities in rural Mississippi, with some maintaining their own clean water systems and wastewater systems. Like cities and counties across the state, community colleges have aging infrastructure that needs to be replaced. It's important that our campuses be able to provide services, not just to our students, but also to members of the local communities. Some campuses provide food options for towns on the weekends, along with places to host civic events. So it's just not the students that benefit from quality infrastructure, but the entire community. The second item we would like to propose, which is the third slide in your packet, is funding to address the current supply chain issues we are seeing across the state and nation. This falls under a workforce proposal. 20% of our enrollment from 2020 was from career and technical education. These are the 4 credit programs that lead to Associate of Applied Science degrees and other certifications in areas such as allied health, welding, and HVAC. We all know the issues that are impacted our supply chain, from the manufacturing of goods to getting products to consumers. These issues are critical to our economy. As a possible solution to this issue, we are asking for $15 million to create the Mississippi Community College Supply Chain Workforce Solution. These funds would allow us to offer new programs, expand current ones to address supply chain issues. Possible programs include logistics technology, commercial truck driving, precision manufacturing, and aviation maintenance technology. Basically, any program that pertains to a good being manufactured all the way until it reaches the consumer. We would target low-income, unemployed, and non-traditional students that have been impacted by COVID. With Mississippi's logistics resources, we feel this would be a good investment in ARPA funding. We're in the process of finalizing this plan. The final item we would like to propose is $15 million for allied health programs at the community colleges. We all know the strain that COVID has put on our healthcare system, and particularly the nurses. Each of our community colleges offers practical nursing programs. According to the Mississippi Board of Nursing, total capacity at our community college nursing programs is just over 1,000 students, and all of our programs are either at capacity or near capacity. In 2018, 2019, our programs graduated 726 practical nursing graduates. If funding is provided for the expansion of allied health programs, this could allow us to produce more healthcare workers to combat COVID. These funds could be used to purchase additional equipment, hire extra nursing faculty, and other issues required to expand programs. The three requests from the community colleges total $84.6 million. The first request is important to the operation of each community college campus in the local community. And the second and third requests are critical to our state's economy and healthcare system. Chairman Polk, thank you for your time. And if there's anything that we can do to help y'all, please let us know. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Senator Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here today. The $15 million ask for the allied health programs, do you know about how many people that would produce?
I do not. We're just at a critical point with all of our nursing programs being either at capacity or near capacity. I can get more information as to how many new nurses we could push out with additional funds, though.
Be something that was spread across the entire 15 community colleges?
It is, yes, sir. Both that $15 million ask and the 15 for the supply chain.
Thank you.
program.
Senator Parks?
Thank you, Senator Polk, Chairman. I guess I'm really struggling since we've heard from both the colleges and the universities in regards to broadband, because we have just spent millions in this state. And we've done that through local cooperatives. We've done that through various programs. I would like to challenge both groups, if you would, since I am chairman of community colleges and universities, if you would please get me what you're looking for there, because I think we need to go back and potentially look at what's available, especially with another 186 million coming into the state. And even if that had to be done legislatively, I want to make the best of every group of funds that we have coming into the state. And that would be another pot that potentially we could draw from if we could look at that a little bit deeper. So if, again, I'd like to challenge both of you at this time to get that information, if you would, please.
Thank you, Senator Parks. Other questions? Okay, I have one, and it goes back to basically Senator Williams' question. I think one of the most important things we've got to do is figure out how to have medical staff in Mississippi doing the things they need to do. And I would be interested, as he was, in how many more graduates will you be able to give Mississippi with that $15 million?
Yes, sir. We can get that information.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from the Mississippi Association of Independent Colleges and Universities. And I believe we have Dr. Blake Thompson to present. Nope. Oh, I'm sorry.
He promised it wasn't the Omicron variant, so. I'm Jason Dean. I'm the part-time executive director for the Mississippi Association of Independent Colleges and Universities. It's great to be before y'all once again in this room. I was formerly chairman of the State Board of Education for the last 2.5 years through COVID and the CARES Act. So we're very appreciative of what you've done for education. And we're super thankful for y'all allowing the independent colleges and universities to come and present to you what some of our needs are. So, and I think we can make up some of the time for you. We've only got 3 slides. I don't know who's operating this. Is there this here? Where'd I point? There we go. Just a quick reminder of who the independent colleges and universities are. As you can see, there's 7 spread throughout the state, including 2 HBCUs. And so while you might not have one in your district, I promise you, you have a student or a parent or even an alumni who represents one of our 7 institutions. You can see our student demographics is kind of an eye-opening number for me. When you do our cumulative enrollment, it's 15,000. So depending on which year, that would make us 3rd behind either Ole Miss or Mississippi State, Ole Miss are really, really close. So that's a significant impact, for the state of Mississippi. And almost 70% of that undergraduate population is actually in state, which I think is also a pretty eye-opening statistic. We graduate a little north of 4,000 students per year, most of which stay in the state of Mississippi, according to our data. And about 45% of our students are comprised of minority students. 73 different academic majors across the 7 institutions. And we have about 87,000 alumni in the state. So like I said, whether or not you have one of these institutions actually in your backyard or in your district, I can assure you, Senator Hill, Senator Frazier, I know you've got several in your district. I can assure you that the impact is felt from your constituents. And the economic impact, over 2,000 full-time jobs. These are faculty and staff at the 7 institutions, not even counting the students that are hired as full-time, and $250 million operating budget, and bringing in about $14.3 million in federal financial aid. So that I like this slide just as a reminder, that we're here, we have a significant impact in the state, but we're here to talk about the ARPA opportunity. So I've asked Laura Jackson to be with me. Y'all might recognize Laura. She was the former DFA director, but now is the COO and CFO of Mississippi College. And she was a part of the last year's regular session in 2020 around House Bill 1793. And I've asked her to maybe talk a little bit about this because I think this is important, is it sets the precedent that federal dollars have been used in the near term in the past through the CARES Act to fund independent colleges and universities. And we appreciate your consideration for that. So, Laura.
I'll just take a minute and really to say, just on behalf of the private colleges, to say thank you to y'all for our inclusion in House Bill 1793. Y'all were the first ones to step up to the plate to help us when COVID became a word in our dictionaries. What I would say is that this allocation that we received from each of those, from House Bill 1793 to each of those universities was really made a difference in our abilities to keep going in the spring and in the summer and early fall of 2020. We used the money for everything from, personal protective equipment. We put air ionizations into our buildings to try to filter the air out. We bought COVID testing kits, and we set up a COVID testing clinic on the campus at Mississippi College, as did several other universities, to be able to keep up and keep our doors open. And we were able to do that. So let me just say thank you on behalf of the private colleges in the state for our inclusion in House Bill 1793.
Just one more slide, but this is the important one. So we were asked last Monday, again, Senator Polk, thank you for the opportunity to come here and present to you. Last Monday, we were asked to reach out to our presidents and ask, what are some allowable expenses that's allowable through the ARPA funds that you already have? That I wouldn't say that we vetted those projects, Mr. Chairman, but I'd say they're shovel ready, that they were already on the books. A lot of the engineering work's already been done, or they're programs that exist already on the colleges, like nursing programs or public health administration programs. I don't want to digress too much, but we would love the opportunity to come back during the regular session or between now and then, provide you a detailed list of each of these projects. All 7 of them emailed me probably 15 pages worth of projects ready to go that were, allowable according to the ARPA regulations. So we could either come back and do, a detailed presentation with the 7 presidents, or however you want to do that on each of these projects. We've consolidated them, or we can just submit that to you in writing. But we just took our numbers and we just put them into the one big number of $39,473,000. That's a big number. This is everything though for our 7 institutions. And just like the folks who came before us, the community colleges and the universities, they fit in those 3 big categories: health sciences, infrastructure, broadband. Senator Parks, I appreciate your earlier question about the broadband. There is a need for broadband, whether it comes to us or goes to the rural co-ops or however that gets through the ISP. That's y'all's decision. But just as an advocate for the ongoing need for distance education for those students who need access to distance education, expansion of broadband is absolutely needed, particularly in our more rural setting. So thanks for that question. But just like the others, nursing, public health administration, we feel like we could contribute scores, if not hundreds, of nurses and public health officials or administrators into the Mississippi workforce in short order, increasing in tuition, increasing in support for faculty and staff, laboratory equipment, that sort of thing. The infrastructure upgrades, just like the others. Go to these campuses and we invite you to do so. You'll see some old buildings, 100 years old in some cases, antebellum in some cases, and they have significant infrastructure needs that I think meet the allowable expenses in ARPA, particularly in the water and sewer. And I've already covered the broadband expansion. So in order to make up time, I'll just stop right there and just ask what questions y'all might have of us.
Thank you. Questions? Senator Williams.
I guess the same question I had a moment ago. Is there a way to quantify how many students you could produce with increased funding in the health sciences arena?
I'm sorry.
If money's allocated to increase your health sciences, could you tell me, for how many dollars you could produce so many nurses or doctors or?
Yeah, that's a number that we can provide.
Okay.
Yep.
Another question, you refer to installation of solar panels. Does
Yep,
that ARP money qualify for that?
So as an energy efficiency project, I think that is one of the qualifications for upgrade on energy efficiency largely. I know that's discussion's been had in different education settings through community colleges, through the K-12 system as well. So, that's why I included that as a bullet point. I think it is allowable. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This may be a question that will take you a minute to get back to us on. How many different health sciences degrees do our private 4 years offer?
Laura anticipated that question. She has an answer.
I did anticipate this question. There are of the 7, there are several that have nursing programs. There are several that have what I would call pathway degrees. If you are interested in physical therapy or medical school, there are several of those that have pathway degrees to get there. There are many that have medical terminology degrees. There are several that have exercise science, nuclear medicine, pharmacy, radiation. There are all across the board, as far as the medical field goes, there are pathways through these 7 private colleges to get to those degrees. So that would be a follow-up question that I might have for you. Are you interested in more than just nursing graduates? Are you also interested in those who might be looking at pre-med or some other, or public health? I know there's a great need for public health professionals in general in this country. So is that something you might be interested in as well? Okay.
Thank you. I think that'd be very important for us to know as we study further. Yes. If you could break those numbers down by the category, like public health. Yes. Yes. And of course, one of your universities that happens to be close to the district I represent even has a medical school now producing doctors. So
Correct.
that's very interesting.
Successful one.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much. We
I just want
appreciate
to wrap up. Thank y'all for what you're doing. I mean, I've been in this room after Hurricane Katrina, after the American Rescue and Recovery Act of 2008, 2009. This is a major crisis that we're dealing with, and I appreciate you taking the time to get organized. And here, I've looked at your agenda for the rest of December. God bless you. But thank you for inviting us, and appreciate what y'all do for us.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from the High Chief Justice, Mr. Randolph. Justice Randolph, if you would. He is going to speak to us about the needs of the court system, the things that they have experienced during COVID, and the ways we might be able to help them. Mr. Chief Justice, welcome. And if you need to use this building at some time, you're welcome.
Well, we'll probably need a couple more chairs up there, but that'd be fine. But thank you for the opportunity. I hope I'm coming across on the air well here. I had brought with me, and I won't take time to read it, but what is critical is of all the people that are going to come before you with their many requests, the courts have a constitutional obligation to remain open at all times. It's a constitutional amendment from 24. And the reason that's so important is if somebody living in a trailer home, I'll say that, not to make fun of anybody because I grew up in a trailer. But if it blows up in the middle of the night and there's a meth lab in there, and there's a couple children, somebody's got to decide where those children go. And if a spouse gets beat up in the middle of the night and needs a protective order, she's got to have a judge. I remember when COVID first hit, I got a call from a justice court judge. And what he told me, he said, I'm going home, Mike. And I said, for what? He said, I got some of those underlying conditions. I said, underlying conditions? I got 5 of them. I'm sitting here in my office. We have to be open. If you get someone else to take your seat, that'll be okay. And when the governor issued that stay-at-home order in Lauderdale County, y'all remember the first order? Lauderdale County, everybody stay at home. And I had a call over there and I said, let me speak to the governor's lawyer. And I did. And I talked to him and I said, look, the Supreme Court has to keep the courts open. If the governor just will remove that restriction, because people have to be at the courthouse. We changed how we did business. And then we made immediate requests. We made requests to the governor, we made requests over here. And thank goodness, $2.5 million came from over here. $2.5 million. And one of the things about us coming and asking for money today is we've asked for money before and you all gave it to us. And ain't too many folks give y'all money back. We did. And the reason we did is because when the Senate gave us, along with the House money, it had to be spent by the end of December of that year. And so we worked up to the very end, and I even asked for a special deal with the Senate because they said it's got to be spent by the end of the year. But I had already read the CARES Act. I knew the federal government allowed you 90 days. Everything had to be incurred before the end of the year. And so we did, and we made 2 amounts. We sent $164,000 back to DFA in December because that money was not obligated. And we had another $800,000 that was obligated to be spent out in the communities you all represent. And, but they got their money from elsewhere and called us back. We sent another $864,000 back to DFA. So we've already proven we can be good stewards. We've already shown that. And the same thing right now, $2.5 million came from the executive office. We had another year. We had till the end of this year. Out of that $2.5 million, then we had, we got about 310,000 right now that if nothing else gets spent, will go back to DFA. All that money goes back into employment security fund, I believe is where it went to. But we have shown, I had asked one of my assistants to come. There's 3 people in the line of command in this whole deal. The court's relatively small, so I don't have a bunch of presidents and deans and all that. I look at it like my own checkbook. Greg Snowden is director of AOC. He's number 2 and looking at the checkbook. And Jennifer Parrish, I asked to be over. I don't know if she made it or not. I wanted you to see her because when we got the money to start with, the first thing I did is call the state auditor and said, will you all sit in and have a meeting with us so we can go over the CARES Act to make sure that the federal government can't call back money. And they came over. And then there was a request to have private auditors. So they came in. Every dollar we spent and every dollar that you all will grant us this time, we have it approved on the daily basis. The auditors see the request in real time. So we're auditing as we go. And I don't think everybody else is doing that. What I'm telling you is whatever you entrust with us will be well spent, and what is not spent on what's allowed under federal law and state law will be returned to you all. I promise you that. Now I'll answer any questions we got. You've got the sheet. What we're asking for, I think it's about $13 million. how we came up with that, and I'm real proud of what we did with the money, because I can talk about performance with CARES Act. Okay, I asked for $5 million. We closed up and above normal case closures due to the appointment of special judges, which I asked you all to appoint, 9,415 cases up and above what normally gets closed. We've already performed. We've shown performance. And what we got left is about 24,000, because when I came to you the first time, we estimated the backlog at 33,000 cases. So we still got another 24,000 cases to go. We're about 1/3 done. The money I'm asking for is to help me finish the job. All that money goes back to the local communities. They don't get spent across the street. You can see on the list that I have prepared before you. And one of the most important things is the second paragraph of that list. And what it says is that the final rules, and we've already looked at the federal aspect of this, so we don't get caught up in any clawbacks. The final rule is that the state and local government's ability to effectively administer services such as courts being unable to operate safely during the pandemic. Some of the money down there we're asking is for technology and equipment. You see $538,000 in that list. Now, what that is for is what's called ELMO. That is an evidence presentation device. Well, what about that? Well, it keeps people from moving around. It allows somebody to put an exhibit on a device, and the jurors don't have to handle paper and pass it around. Everybody in the courtroom can see it. That's part of the technology that I talked to a judge down in Harrison County today, said, can you get me some Elmos up here? I said, we've done that in the past. It's approvable. So that's the technological aspect of it. But what it says is that during the pandemic, result in backlogs, that's what we're dealing with, implement safety measures, hire additional court staff. The lieutenant governor of this body had asked me a year ago, could I help with some problems that prosecutors were having in helping fund prosecutors in this area. And I said, well, the House bill that we got limited us to point money to judges, but I will go ask and see if the money that came from the executive branch, if they would object to me doing that. And they said, no, if you feel like it's right. And I had a request from the public defenders. They said, well, if you're going to give money to prosecutors, give money to public defenders. That got approved as well. But then what happened was I met with local prosecutors and we agreed on an amount that was going to be done at the request of the lieutenant governor. And he didn't request the amount. It's just I was going to help him to a certain stage. But we started having problems getting receipts verified coming out of Hinds County. I'm sorry, that's just the way it was. And what I told them, I'm not going to spend any money coming to the county until you all verify back to us so that we can prove up what we're doing. That's the way we look after your money, just like it was coming out of my own checkbook. And so we couldn't do that because we couldn't do it through the end of the year. Those kind of funds are eligible though, okay? And so we can do those kind of things to advance these court dockets, and I'll be happy to work with them as long as what we do is all the equipment that we allow to be purchased. People make the request, we look at it, make sure it's CARES Act qualified, then we obligate the money, and then it belongs to the county. Okay, we're not going to take inventory of all that. Those things go to the county. I know one county down on the coast, $200,000 or $300,000 worth of equipment. Neil Harrison, Chancery Courts in that judicial district down there. But they end up owning the property and they care for it, but they still got to do it right when they make the request. So that's the way we look after your money. So basically we need the case backlog, $10 million. I've had a request from our intervention courts, and I know everybody this year is thinking a lot about intervention courts and the success that we have in intervention courts all over the state. It's the best deal Mississippi's got by far. But because of COVID, there's federal money out there. You can use this federal money for additional treatment because unfortunately, drug usage is going up during this time. Unfortunately, mental health issues are going up at this time. And so what we're saying is that $2.1 million would be used exclusively to get federal training on specific targeted areas, veterans, mental health, and the others. We're asking $836,000 for cybersecurity. I didn't even know what cybersecurity was. I have to have them technology people explain to me what it is. But I know one thing, because we communicate so much now at a distance, I'm writing opinions that I'm showing some judge up in North Mississippi, and I don't want one of them spyware things to call up and say, we'll let you all open up your system if you pay us $1 million or some kind of ransom. So the cybersecurity is to allow courts to communicate and to buy the necessary equipment to get that done. That's what that is, and to protect the product so that we can work at a distance from each other. And all those numbers were prepared by our people in IT. Digital recording of youth court proceedings. And I got two things about youth courts. You got an excellent youth court here in Hines County. Super. Carlin is doing just a wonderful job over there. I talked to her on the phone the other day. I said, what do you need over here? And she said, well, one thing we need is some parents can't come to the hearings. Other people can't get in the hearings. They need internet access. I said, well, what can I do about that? And she said, if you all would just provide in a public place, and this might not have to come through us, and go through whoever you want. But she said, if you put internet service where people can just pull up in a public park where they can tag in to internet. They've got iPads and things, they just don't have the equipment. In other places like Issaquah County, places like that, sometimes parents can't afford to go to hearings. And so there's computers set up in those small counties. And so if a parent wants to watch a proceeding and the proceeding's held south of there or whatever, then it can be done. We're doing that all over the court. So we're not asking for a whole ton of money regarding that, but digital recording is because we don't have court reporters. And we're trying to get, at least have some recording of the hearing going on. That's all it is. That $500,000 is also tied in with federal money. Deanna Grace with our department asked that if we would just please try to get that money. And there's some federal matching money tied in with that. So the trial court's $538,000. Greg sent out memos last week to every judge in the state. So what do you need? And that's what we need. We know what the numbers are. We bought air purification systems. We have rented convention centers. We have whatever it takes to get trials done. But Mississippi is handling their cases. Our judges are doing it. And all we need is to finish the job. So you've got the amount of money I need to get us to the next step. It's not a pie in the sky deal. It really isn't. It's just hard. It's just provable. Every bit of this can be checked out and verified by the finest businessmen and accountants in the world. I'm not the least bit worried about it. I'll take any questions.
Questions? Senator Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice. The $9.5 million, I'm assuming that if that's allocated, that it will help alleviate the current backlog. If that's the case, how long would it take to work through that backlog once that money's allocated?
What is that? One more time.
The $9.4 million for the continuing case backlogs as a result of COVID, I'm assuming is what that those dollars are that will help alleviate those backlogs. Do you know how long it would take to catch up, basically?
In the last 17 months, we knocked out 9,415 cases out of 33,000. So I'm thinking like we're 1/3 of the way through is what I'm thinking. You'll see in our handout, I know when the cutoff dates are. I think we got through December 24 to get things done. I think we got a real shot to pull that off. Also, all that was new. It's not new any longer. And so I've talked to judges driving up here this morning, and say, look, if you got extra courtrooms, you got things backed up, I want them done. See, to me, it's more than just a COVID thing. I had a daughter get a divorce a couple years ago. Took her 2 years, didn't have no money to split up, nothing to fight over. I thought, this is just wrong. Why can't people get a lawsuit filed, get in and out of court and go home? You know, whether it be chancery or circuit court, don't make no difference. And so I am trying to impress upon my judge that we are going to get these dockets cleaned up. Initially, the problem you have is, well, I know that the lieutenant governor called me one day. He said, you need to appoint some judges. I said, well, I can do that. And he said, well, do it. I said, well, using the power and abusing the power are two different things. If I don't have cooperation, it ain't gonna work. By the time I appoint a judge to show up somewhere, well, there ain't no place to park, there ain't this, there ain't that. So that's probably mine. Turn it off. That sounds like it. I apologize. I really apologize. I probably ought to fine myself about $50 for being letting the phone go off here in the court. Since this is a courtroom, is 50 sufficient, Lieutenant Governor? Would that? I apologize. I'm sorry. I give him one thing to do, and what happened? No, I do apologize. That's terribly embarrassing. But we have worked in helping and seeing the Lieutenant Governor sitting over there. We couldn't find places. He and the speaker got together and made elbow available for us to hold court down there. And that's the kind of things we're doing. Everything it takes to get it done. Everybody working together. But these numbers are real. Again, I'm talking too much. I need to answer questions.
Yes, go ahead.
Just one other question as it relates to the $836,000 for cybersecurity. Your best understanding is that the money that's needed for cybersecurity for the state's courts?
Cybersecurity thing, they told me what this amount of money to do because they mentioned licensing and I thought, oh, well, wait a minute, this is a carryover. On the cybersecurity that they are looking at is a one-time licensure fee. So you buy the product and you pay the license fee up front. And I'm not asking for any kind of thing that'll drag us all down later with other expenses. And that is for the appellate court system.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice. Appreciate you being here today.
Thank you,
And we
Mr.
look
Chairman.
forward to studying your request.
Thank you very much.
Next is the Accelerate Mississippi. And I believe we have Ryan Miller. And looks like Garrett McInnes may have come with him. For what purpose, I have no idea, but if you'll give us just a second to get the handouts out.
For the record, I need all the moral support I can get.
Okay, Mr. Miller, I believe we've gotten handouts to everyone.
Oh, it's on the floor. Yes. Thank you. Chairman Polk, thank you for y'all's willingness to have this meeting today. Committee members, thank you for the opportunity to come and visit with you. My name is Ryan Miller, and I am the new Executive Director for the Office of Workforce Development, which we now refer to as Accelerate Mississippi. I have now been in this position for nearly 7 months, almost 8 months, and I can tell you that the opportunity is enormous. The responsibility is certainly something that I take very seriously. And I'm grateful certainly for your leadership in your part in creating this office, something that I think was very necessary and very timely. Senator Parker and his leadership and courageous creativity in creating the legislation for this office, and certainly your support of the House and the Speaker, support of Lieutenant Governor and the Governor's office, greatly appreciated. This is a responsibility that we take very seriously. I have with me my team members, Garrett McInnes, as you've noticed already, but also Dr. Courtney Taylor and Dr. Nathan Oakley. These are members of our executive team, a small team, but a very capable and energetic team that is tasked with leading strategy development for the state as it relates to workforce, but not just the development of the strategy, also the deployment. It's something that we do take seriously, and something that I wanted to reiterate by allowing you to see kind of some of our mission statement, vision statements. We've been given an opportunity to finally have a coordinating entity, a lens through which we can focus all of our resources, to be more strategic in how we develop programming and how we deploy it in a way that makes sense and moves the needle, not just in our metropolitan areas, but also in our rural communities as it relates to workforce opportunities. Opportunities that will help our people find better jobs, careers, but also opportunities for our employers, our businessmen and women, our industry members to find the people that they need with the skills that they need. But we recognize that even though it is our belief that we are created to be that chief agency and department, we know that we're also part of a team. You've already heard from IHL and the Community College Board. These are two organizations with whom we have a growing and I think a very strong relationship, and opportunities for us to collaborate even more as it relates to our mission. We also have a very strong and growing relationship with the Department of Education and any number of other state agencies and organizations for which workforce is a part of what they do. I think you'll hear from Mississippi Department of Employment Securities here momentarily. We see ourselves as a teammate, but we also see ourselves as the tip of the spear as it relates to developing that strategy and deploying that strategy. But we take it seriously, and we want you to understand that we're grateful for your support, certainly your wisdom and your direction as we attempt to do what we believe we were created to do. As it relates to this opportunity, this is an opportunity that I hope we may never find ourselves in again. Unprecedented times dealing with coronavirus and our state's response to helping our people stay healthy and grow in their opportunities to find better jobs, to grow emerging from the coronavirus and emerging from this pandemic in ways that hopefully will make us stronger and more economically vibrant. We believe that the American Rescue Plan allows for an opportunity for Accelerate Mississippi to serve in the capacity for which we believe we were created. Certainly the language that speaks to including aid for unemployed workers and opportunities to create or maybe grow job training opportunities. As I said at the beginning, we do take this very seriously, so seriously, in fact, that we're asking and requesting a sizable amount of money because we believe there is much to be done. And we believe there is much opportunity to grow these programs and to grow these opportunities to help Mississippians and Mississippi businesses. We have 4 different opportunity areas or sectors that we would like to present to you. The cumulative effect, the cumulative amount is to the tune of $250 million. But the 4 sectors that we would like to highlight are ones that we believe are very, very important and certainly have been specifically impacted by the pandemic and our response to it. The first is our healthcare initiative, our healthcare sector, the lens through which we wish to focus 40% of that allocation, were we to receive it, toward growing pathways and pipelines for nurses, doctors, nursing technicians, medical technicians. The entire life cycle of the medical field needs people. Now, you asked questions earlier about the numbers of nurses. How could we grow programs? I too don't have the overall number as to how much we could grow capacity through all of our partnered organizations, but I can tell you that last year, according to the state longitudinal data system, we post roughly 6,000 plus openings for nursing staff, for RN, for LPN, but we only fill roughly 4,000 of those, 2,000 of those positions. So there's 4,000 jobs that go unfilled just in nursing categories alone. We have community colleges with whom we've partnered who also have submitted proposals to us for other funding sources that say that they can grow their programs by 100% within 3 years, specifically in nursing. We know that there's a need. We know that there is a need that's across the state, and we have partners in place through our community college systems to increase and grow those pathways and pipelines, to bring more people to fill those needs and to help our Mississippians in those times that are most intimate and most dire. I would also suggest to you that that is the life cycle of healthcare is not just in the nursing categories or doctors or those technicians, it's also in first responders. I served as a volunteer fireman for roughly 5 years in Lafayette County. And I can tell you that first responders, firemen, firewomen, paramedics, EMS, EMT, these are individuals that are being asked to come into dangerous situations. Now you add on top of that a pandemic, it exacerbates the danger and the risk that they face. We need to have this type of allocation of funding to help provide opportunities for training and growing the capabilities in some of our most rural communities. The next category, the next sector is what we call emerging sectors. We're asking for $87.5 million. Now, I don't want to bring up the topic of broadband because I think we've talked about that a little bit, but there's some other emerging technologies, innovative sectors for which we need to address. Some of those areas would include advanced manufacturing. We have partners, we have industry input that is suggesting that the increase in technology in their factory floors is also providing opportunities, but also providing challenges. In fact, Nissan North American, the corporate office, called the Center for Manufacturing Excellence last year and said, we need help managing the data that we're creating in our factories and in our plants, just from the machines talking to one another. We don't know what to do with that data. And what you're seeing is that now that supply chains hopefully are opening back up and we are ramping up in our production, there's a need for developing pathways, infrastructure for data management, data analysis. We have opportunities to train more young men and women in artificial intelligence and how that impacts advanced manufacturing. We have opportunities to train young men and women in electrification and all the infrastructure that might be needed for those industry sectors that are sitting on the peripheral of Mississippi right now looking for opportunities. And we have the opportunity to lay out that groundwork, provide more Mississippians chances to have jobs in emerging sectors, chances to make higher wages, chances to make wages that can substantiate familial wealth in families that many people haven't even experienced that before. So emerging sectors and areas such as that, we think we need substantial funding to help create those pathways. You've also heard from some of our partners and some of our sister organizations, supply chain and logistics. We're asking for a certain percentage to help in that endeavor as well. We need more men and women as our trucking operators. It is a known fact that community colleges and their partners in logistics and supply chain desperately need more young men and women to sit behind the wheel and provide the services, bringing our goods, our products, our raw materials to the shelves where we need them the most. Advances in technology and warehousing, artificial intelligence, and electrification as it relates to warehousing is also something that's certainly growing in the logistics and supply chain industry. We need to have more robust pathways to bring more young people into those careers as well. The last area that I would bring up is what we call our specific populations. These are populations that we've identified and had conversation with our employers that need more assistance. We've had great conversations with our veteran affairs and military affairs partners. Mississippi has probably per capita some of the more robust military presence in the state of Mississippi, both in installation and in personnel. But we want to provide more training opportunities as those young men and women may be transitioning out of active duty or even reserve duty status, that we can take the training that they've received in the service to their country and translate that more proactively and efficiently and effectively to the private sector. We've seen during the COVID response, how men and women were serving in that capacity in the National Guard, providing vaccinations at vaccination sites, working tirelessly to see to it that Mississippians are healthy, that are protected. We want to see to it that we provide the mechanisms to help them find gainful employment and transitionary skill opportunities once they leave the service. We also hope that that would position Mississippi as a destination location for more military personnel to see Mississippi as a place to relocate. We're also describing as our specific populations single mothers. So I've had any number of conversations with some of our nonprofit organizations, Woodward Hines, Skills Foundation, Goodwill. We've also even talked to the Mississippi Low Income Child Care Initiative. Young mothers who, but for the opportunity to provide for childcare, would not have an opportunity to advance in their careers. Young mothers who work full-time jobs that can't afford to quit that job so they can participate in training during the day may need additional resources, whether it be funding directly to help them procure childcare after hours, or funding to help more programs to stand up new child care facilities and new child care programs that are non-traditional in hours, that single mothers can go back, receive the training that they need, participate in the jobs that will help them advance and be prosperous. We've also begun the conversations with some of our partners as it relates to currently incarcerated and formerly incarcerated Mississippians, men and women who are looking for a second chance and looking for an opportunity to grow, looking for a chance to provide for their families, and certainly be an asset to the state of Mississippi and to their communities. And we think that the specific populations category of $25 million would help us grow some of those pathways and some of those resources. We recognize that you all have a huge responsibility in helping to identify ways to use this funding effectively, efficiently, and correctly. And so we certainly yield to your wisdom, certainly yield to your input. We are doing what we think is best. We take our job very seriously, and we certainly welcome any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you. Questions? Senator Parks?
As I look down these ask, and I look at the logistics in the supply chain, we heard from the community colleges at 15 million. So these would be additional funds of the 12 million for logistics, distribution, supply chain, that type thing?
Yes, ma'am, but I'll make this caveat to that. I mean, we certainly want to work with any organization that if y'all see it best to allocate funds and to maybe suggest that we should collaborate more in that area, we're happy to do that. We're excited about doing that. So today was the first that I had seen any presentation about from other organizations as it relates to supply chain and logistics. We're happy to have conversations to make that more coordinated in the future.
Certainly. You know, and for the healthcare as well, I think there was an ask of 15 million on the community college side, and there's 100 million ask. Is there anything that you would say to that again, that potentially could be overlapping, that those maybe could be covered in that 100 million as well?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, I really believe our organization was created in part to reduce redundancy and to reduce duplication. So wherever there are opportunities that Accelerate Mississippi can help in reducing those redundancies and duplications, we want to do that because that's the most effective way to use the money for which we've been blessed. But again, same answer. We would be willing to absolutely develop a coordinated plan with those other institutions.
Okay, so as you have vetted these, that none of that consideration has been taken to date.
As it relates to our presentation, what we have proposed, again, this is the first opportunity that we've had to see some of our sister organizations make their presentation. So this would be something we would have to have further conversation over.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Butler?
The job in presenting this. But I do have a problem in trying to understand how do you propose to make this happen, or develop these pathways in a period of 3 years?
Well, it is I think a bold request. There's no doubt that what we're asking for is sizable. I think I would suggest that the conversations, and I think even the collaboration that we have had, we are in constant conversation with our 15 community colleges. I communicate with the presidents probably every other week, and their workforce development directors, likewise on a similar frequency. I know that there are programs that are waiting on go that are just looking for opportunities for that funding that I think would be that would show success in a shorter term that would usually be necessary for standing up a program from scratch. There are programs that are already in existence that with additional funding could expand the scale and scope, I think, in a very timely fashion. So I do think it's an aggressive timeframe. I think as the language of the ARPA or the American Rescue Plan allows, we certainly would work within that timeframe. But I think with our partners and the resources and programs they already have in place, I think we can meet that deadline.
Okay. Now, how long have you been in existence now?
7 months.
7 months. And can you give me some concrete examples as to some things that you have put in place at this time to try to carry out the mission that you've outlined here?
Certainly. So April 12th was my first day on the job. It is certainly for several months I was the office, and now I fortunately have my teammates here. Very early on, we recognized that we had authority over 2 funding sources, responsibility over 2, workforce enhancement training dollars and the Mississippi Works programs. We also have, in partnership with our MDES colleagues, some influence over how WIOA or federal WIOA dollars are spent in workforce. In the first 6 months or 7 months of our existence, we have worked to develop new deployment mechanisms for those WET funds with our community college partners. And in fact, have approved multiple programs and multiple initiatives as it relate to diesel technicians, utility line worker programs, advanced manufacturing, CDL, and are even in a conversation and discussions about some of the fiber technology that we need technicians who know how to lay fiber, as also splice glass, which is apparently an art form. So in that short amount of time, we have taken responsibility for those funds. We're working with an outside accounting firm to develop a mechanism for objectivity, certainly to maintain our effectiveness in managing those funds. And we have approved multiple funds to those community colleges that are already starting to hit the ground running to expand those pathways and pipelines in those specific areas.
Okay. Then I look at the fact that you are accelerate Mississippi.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And after the 7-month period, how much dialogue have you had with the Public Service Commission as to what you all might work together and do?
Well, I can tell you, in terms of public service, I can't tell you that we've had any responsibility or authority over public service dollars. I can tell you that our budget comes from the unemployment insurance fund. We have a diversion that helps to fund our staff and our office. We have oversight of the WET funds, Mississippi Works, influence with some of the WIOA dollars, but we believe that it's in the best interest of the state to whatever funding source, other funding sources exist in other state organizations, that we be at the table to help discuss and strategize as to how those dollars should be spent. We have not had the opportunity to do that with every agency or office that has funds for that purpose as of yet.
And Ms. Miller, I don't want you to think I'm picking on you.
That's
but,
okay.
you know, those are some of the things that Mississippi is in their need of yesterday. And so, and I do feel that this will accelerate Mississippi. But one of our problems right now is communication and collaborating with the various agencies so that you won't be duplicated services.
Absolutely.
And everything. So we will, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to emphasize that because that's one of the things that we will be monitoring. Yeah. Thanks.
And I appreciate your input. And I just add to this, thank you for your questions. We have every desire to coordinate better, to collaborate better, communicate better, and to do that way more consistently than has been done in the past. I absolutely agree with your sentiments, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Hopson.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. In case anyone's watching online. First, I would just a comment further to Senator Park's questions about the overlap with community colleges, and to the extent there is a little bit with the IHL. I would strongly recommend that you get with those two agencies and make sure that you have that data tightened up on the healthcare, particularly the healthcare needs, because I want to make sure we're looking at something that's very finite in a number and drill down on what it is that you want to do with those, which kind of leads me to the question I have. And this may be rhetorical, but if you can answer it, great. What is it that we do to make sure that we're getting people into these healthcare? You talked about the healthcare needs that are out there. What do we do to get these openings filled, both in the health, allied health professions and in the teaching part too?
Well, I appreciate you bringing up the teaching part as well. I know that IHL certainly in their nursing programs, one of the the dire needs is having people fill those roles in instruction. You have to have fantastic instructors to have fantastic nurses and healthcare professionals. I think there's a lot that we need to do. Increased communication is one of them. I think we need to, even as early as the high school programs and their career technical education, we need to make abundantly sure that students understand both the opportunity that exists for them, the careers that they can have, but also the service that they are providing to the people in their community. Mississippi is a giving state. It's a philanthropic state. People recognize that serving one another is a virtue in our state, and we can lean on that, leverage that. But it starts with making sure that students know the opportunity that exists. I do think that the healthcare professionals and healthcare providers are looking for more ways to incentivize bringing people into the fold in their offices, whether that be in a doctor's office or in a hospital or in home care, operators. So I think that the private market, the private sector is already looking for ways to incentivize by increasing wages. I think there are opportunities where we can look for increased educational benefits, whether it be through scholarships or payback programs specific to the healthcare professions, that some of this funding or even future funding opportunities could help incentivize and encourage more people to pursue. So there's, I think, a lot of different examples that we have discussed and certainly are willing to further explore. I think it starts with communication, and it absolutely has to be explaining and encouraging the service element right alongside with the wage increase that you can enjoy. And I think there's a very natural need to incentivize it in unique ways that would encourage more people to pursue that, starting in high school through community college, also into IHL or four-year institutions. That I think those are all possibilities for us to increase the likelihood that we can have people in those positions.
I've let this segment go a little longer than the others simply because you're new.
I'm new.
We have not heard from you before.
I'm
and
wet
I think
behind the
everyone
ears.
here
Yes,
has
sir.
questions, and I appreciate your answers. I have a couple of questions myself.
Yes, sir.
Is there data behind the numbers that you've asked for, or are these numbers that you kind of assume will do the job?
There is data that we can provide. Certainly we had a talent assessment report that came out earlier this year, upon which we've made many of these requests and upon which we've based some of our assertions here today that we'd be happy to provide to give you more information, statistical information to back those things up.
Okay. And the second question is, you had 4 categories: healthcare, emerging sectors, logistics, and specific populations. 2 of those categories are equal to or less than your administrative expenditure.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems to be a large administration factor.
Well, the administrative fee, to be perfectly honest with you, because this is my first time in navigating this, that was an assumed number based on what perhaps we've seen in the past. That is a movable, scalable number that I put there just as a safe number. My hope is that it's far less than that, but I wanted to be as conservative as possible by putting that in there in hopes that number would be lower than 10%.
Okay, thank you. My hope would be too.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Any
My
other
pleasure.
questions? Anyone? Senator DeBar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Miller, I've heard from community colleges, and you're like the 4th or the 5th presenter who's talked about getting more nursing students, more healthcare workers through the system. And certainly there was a nursing shortage prior to COVID, and it's only been exacerbated since COVID. And a lot of that is our healthcare workers are leaving the state to take higher paying jobs.
Mhm.
So I guess my question is, and it may be rhetorical or you might not know, is we can put all these healthcare workers through colleges now and get them graduated, get them licensed. But what's to guarantee or ensure that they're going to stay in the state? What can we do to ensure that they stay in the state versus going off taking traveling jobs or other jobs that are much higher paying? So have you thought about that? Do you
Well,
have an answer
we
for that?
have, and to your point, we've had conversations with healthcare professionals that are dealing with that and talking about the very real challenge that, and the educators that work alongside with them, that they can educate the best and brightest, and traveling nursing programs will then entice them for increase in pay, and they'll leave the state of Mississippi. I go back to my previous comment to say that I think these healthcare professionals are certainly looking at ways to incentivize and compete. I do think that it is worth exploring the opportunity where as a form of incentive, if we're helping to incentivize someone's education and helping to pay for fees and charges associated with their education and healthcare, that perhaps they have a willingness, or perhaps it's part of the program, that they agree to stay here for 2 to 3 years beyond their graduation, beyond their completion of their program, as a way to pay back or to invest themselves in the community. That's something we have discussed and something that we're very interested in looking at. We know that there are other areas of professions that have done that and seen some good success. I think that's one element. I think also goes back to even communication and advocating to those who may have already left the state to return home. I think this is a common thread that's running amongst a lot of industry sectors, where we've done a poor job of going to our own that live now outside the state of Mississippi, explaining the opportunity, but also leveraging, again, almost a sense of responsibility that they have to helping their home state, helping it grow. So I think besides the private sector providing their own financial incentive by trying to compete with these out-of-state opportunities, programs that might incentivize the educational process, getting them to stay for a designated period of time after they complete their education, as well as communicating with those that have already left the state to return home. I think we might be able to make a dent in that and turn that tide.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate your
Thank you very
appearance
much.
today. Going to the next segment is the Mississippi Department of Employment Security. Robin Stewart is here. Good afternoon. If you will, just wait just a second while we get the handouts passed.
Thank you. I'm Robin Stewart, the Interim Executive Director of Mississippi Department of Employment Security, and I have with me Tyler Birch, our comptroller who manages our Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. And we appreciate the opportunity to come here and talk to you today, and we'll make this as brief as possible because I know we're running behind. And
You get a little closer to the
Yeah,
microphone.
yes, sir. Is that a little
maybe.
better? Better?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask Tyler to,
Is it, make sure it's on. Is it on?
I
Green
don't
light?
know. It's green. So does that sound better? Okay, I'm going to ask Tyler to give you a brief update on the health of our trust fund, and then I'm going to talk to you about our workforce needs.
I think we have our handout, so y'all please proceed.
Good afternoon. As Director Robin mentioned, I'm Tyler Birch, and I'm here to give a update on the trust fund, a little bit of the history over the last year and a half or so, and then what our ask is and a justification of that ask. So I'll start with this just as kind of a snapshot, high-level overview. USDOL put out a report. They put out this report annually, but it's on the health of trust funds in the United States. And at the start of 2020, there were 33 trust funds among the states that were solvent. All right. At the beginning of 2021, that number was down to 13. And Mississippi was one of those states. And that's largely in part to the infusion of CARES Act money that we got from the legislature. So definitely thank you for that. So I'm going to skip to the UI caseload here, this is just another snapshot overview of what happened as far as UI caseloads during this period. And as you can see down at the bottom left, when in January 2020, we were at 10,000, almost 11,000 UI claims in any given week, okay? And then as you can see in mid-March, April, that spikes. It spikes in May of 2020 to around 234,000 claims. And as you can see, it's continually dropped off to where now we're actually at pre-pandemic levels as far as weekly UI claims at 8,476. I brought a few statistics, just might be interesting. In January of 2020, we were paying out about 1.2 million per week in regular unemployment benefits. Now, that spike in May of 2020 increased that to $36 million in weekly claims. And then as of October 2021, the most recent month, it was right at $1 million. So as you can see, this has trended down and we expect it to continue to do so. Okay. Here is a slide that shows the trust fund balance and the history over COVID. Pre-pandemic, 707 million. Okay, as you can see, and this will follow the claims load that you saw in the previous graph. The balance fell up until the point where we got our first infusion of CARES Act funds, 181 million. As you can see, it spikes in July, continues to decline from there. We got another infusion of 165 million, and a few other infusions of funds as other agencies relinquish their CARES Act funds into the UI trust fund. So our current level is $595 million as of the end of October. I don't know if I mentioned, it was just under 400 million in the CARES Act funds that we received. That's going to play into our request in just a minute. Okay, so our projection for 2022, we project the ending balance to be around 612 million. Okay, that's just based off of some actuarial data, 612 million. We project the general experience rate to be 0.2%. Okay, the trust fund is projected to be solvent in 2022, so that's good news. And there's no forecasted tax rate increases. Okay, so one of the things that we did when COVID first began is when a claimant filed a UI claim, we asked them to check a box if it was a directly COVID impacted claim. And so we have that data today, and that stands, the claimants that selected that it was a COVID impacted claim stands at 488 million. Okay, the total CARES Act infusion that we received was, like I said, 397 million, just under 400 million. And so what our ask is in ARPA funds is just under $91 million. Now, this would restore all the trust fund dollars that from claimants that marked that it was a COVID impacted claim. And our understanding is that the ARPA funds were similar to the CARES Act funds in that it has to be COVID tied. And so this is how we justify that it's an actual COVID tie. And there is data to back this up. Okay, justification, the 90.8 million helps negate the COVID impact on the trust fund, as I already mentioned. It returns the trust fund to pre-pandemic levels. And it also, it improves the trust fund health and helps promote the sustainable solvency of the trust fund. And two things that could potentially arise that would have a negative impact are another spike in cases. And so that could happen and we could see caseloads increase again. And another one is that we're analyzing the effect that the vaccine mandates might have on employment and what kind of impact that might have on the trust fund. So an infusion of 90 million would help those two cases. All right, and with that, I will turn it over to Robin Stewart to discuss our workforce request.
Thank you, Tyler. Our workforce request is fairly easy. We believe that our most immediate need in workforce, and we did coordinate this with Accelerate, is to replace our current MDES mobile unit. As you can see, it's over 16 years old. It's the size of a city bus. It's very hard to maneuver. We do not have a designated driver. Our regular state employees drive the bus. I probably shouldn't say that out loud. Most of them have never driven anything bigger than an SUV, so their skill set's very limited. And so we're limited as to where we can take the mobile unit. So we have been searching for grant funds to replace this large mobile unit with between 1 and 4 smaller units. We currently have 44 wind job centers throughout the state. They're located in the 4 local workforce areas. And the biggest request that we get from workforce stakeholders, including members of the legislature, is to open additional wind job centers. We had a request from a senator as recent as 2 weeks ago to open an additional wind job center. And, workforce funds, we receive federal funding, and federal funding is limited. And as you know, brick and mortar is very expensive, and putting staff in those buildings is even more expensive. So we believe that smaller mobile units would be a cost-effective way to serve people in rural counties. We're going to continue to search for grant funds if we don't receive ARPA funds, or maybe we can find a way to blend funding for it. But we believe that 1 mobile unit would allow us to go to special events and serve some regular schedules throughout the state. But between 2 and 4 mobile units would allow us to serve every single county in the state where there's not a wind job center. In times of disaster, we could deploy the mobile units to take unemployment insurance claims. They would have come in very handy back in 2020 for us. We would be able to go to places of businesses that are struggling to find staffing to host job fairs. Right now, those businesses come to our wind job centers. We could save them time and money by going directly to them on site with our technology. When we go to correctional facilities and homeless shelters, we would have our technology on site with us. We believe this would complement the work that Accelerate Mississippi is doing, and Institutes of Higher Learning and the Community College Board. So, we've been assessing the cost for these mobile units over the past several weeks, actually. And when we got the request to come here, we had already started working on this. Had a chance to go to Tennessee and see their mobile unit, which is about the size of the one in the picture. It has the same exact number of workstations as our large bus. Has classroom space, so you could go out and teach soft skills, resume classes wherever you wanted to throughout the state. And so if we had 4 mobile units, we would designate 1 to the counties in each of the local workforce areas. But 1 would allow us to do some of the work. So we estimated that each mobile unit fully equipped and with the Wind Job Center logo on the side would cost up to $250,000. So if we had 4, that would be up to $1 million unless we could blend other grant funding. So that's our only workforce request for you. We'd be happy to take any questions about the trust fund or our workforce request or any other item that you might have.
Thank you. Any questions from Senator Parks?
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you all for your presentation. It was quite interesting and refreshing to see that we're only 90 million. That would solidify it. So that's exciting. My question, and you made a comment. So are we already going out, taking the mobile unit to the correction facilities and homeless facility, or is that something that you would be doing? Or
we do, but we're limited. We have to look at the space. In Mississippi, we have some really tight. The last 3 times we have taken it out, there was either a minor accident or it broke down. So we have to see what the space looks like. I mean, if we're going to the Coliseum in Jackson, we can get that mobile unit in just fine. But a couple of years ago, we went downtown to the Marriott, and our driver almost never got it out of the downtown area. So we do. It just depends on where we're going. So we go to those locations. We just don't always take our technology with us. So this would be just like having the Wind Job Center right at a correctional facility or a homeless shelter, or in any of your communities where you wanted it to be.
okay, that's exciting that we're reaching out to those areas, because as we all are aware that we need workforce.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
thank you. Thank you.
Senator Williams?
Couple logistical questions. The new vans you're talking about, would they require a person to have a CDL, or can any license drive it?
They would not. It's just a regular, if you would believe this, the bus requires just a regular driver's license also. It does. So it's frightening a little bit. So
Is there any residual value for the current bus?
we believe that there is. We looked at that last week, and we have to go back, and it was purchased around the time of Hurricane Katrina. So our federal rules require that If we sell something that we purchase with federal funds, those funds have to go back into that federal source. So we would likely have to return that money to Department of Labor.
Okay, the $250,000 price tag per truck, I assume that's just the detailing and customizations, what requires that high price tag? for
That's
it?
the technology, the computers on the inside, everything to make it ADA accessible, everything. Now that's up to, this was kind of short notice for us. So we didn't have to, we had started looking at pricing, but we did, because it was a holiday week, we did not have time to get more specific pricing, but we did talk to a few other states and get their bids on some of their buses to get some of the prices.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Question is looking forward. If by chance there was another epidemic, pandemic, y'all struggled.
We did.
And I felt sorry for you under the weight of the load you had, but y'all survived. Are you now at the point where if it happened again, it'd be almost like a walk in the park for you?
I certainly wouldn't call it a walk in the park, but we do think we're much better equipped. We've improved our technology. We've changed out our phone systems. When the pandemic hit, as you all probably know, all of our phone systems throughout the state, including our Win Job Centers, tied together on lines that, that there are only so many free lines. We've solved that problem. That won't happen again, to the best of our knowledge. So we're better prepared. Now, we've always been prepared for a hurricane, a flood, a tornado, but we did not envision a nationwide disaster. But we've made a lot of improvements since March of 2020, and the mobile units would complement that work.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, thank you very much for coming and explaining this to us, and we will look at your request.
We appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency. Stephen McCraney, I believe, is here. If you will, just give us a few minutes to.
Looks like everybody's taking a break.
Yeah, I think
I
this
like
is a
a
good
break.
one. I don't know what that
That's good.
says about you, but
I won't take offense to that, not at all. Turned out the last one, didn't it?
You know what they said? I think that one of the things that happened to the state of Mississippi is that we're always sending
Good,
money
man. How
back
about you?
because we're
Scrambling.
unprepared. We don't want to prepare ourselves for the poor and the neglect. The what? Right. And so that's why we have to try to change it. And that they have to know that they have to.
Okay, to be able to stay somewhat on schedule, I think I'll call our meeting back to order, even though I don't think I recessed it, but if you would, you may go ahead.
All right, sir. Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say thank you, Steve McCraney. I'm the Director of MEMA. And I just want to say thank you to the panel here, that your leadership. I've been watching y'all grill everybody else before I got up here. I'm just going to let you know that. So I hope I've anticipated everything, and I want to do some informational as well as request as other agencies are. First, I want to today welcome everybody to day 636 of the COVID response mission in the state of Mississippi. We're still at it. Tomorrow will be 637. It's been, we've been in response mode for probably 2 years now, along with other state agencies. Of course, the Department of Health was in the lead, and we supplied for them all the logistical support and all the operational support. We moved them into our building, some of their folks, and here we are. So we were tasked early on, the mission was to procure PPE that was not available. It was one of those missions where there was some times where you thought you were in the middle of the night talking to somebody on the phone in another country, and they were promising you they could get you things, and they didn't. We were one of the few states I did not forward people money. I did not deposit $10 million in overseas accounts. We kept our money here in Mississippi, and I'll go through that a little bit later on. It was not a simple task buying overseas when you can plan those things. It was very, very difficult. We had distribution of personal protection equipment in over 7 warehouses. 2 or 3 of those warehouses, we were buying weekly rat poison, just trying to keep them from eating the boxes that were in there. The state of Mississippi did not have a logistical center at that time. We do now. It's something we're very, very proud of. Leadership here in the legislature, in the governor's office, lieutenant governor's office, and others. It was here to serve the citizens, the students, and the citizens of the state of Mississippi, as well as our healthcare workers, my wife being included in that group of being a healthcare worker. So I just want to show you a small video, very short, about the state's Emergency Logistical Operations Center. It's in Byron, Mississippi, off Mendel Davis Drive, in that industrial zone out there, and just kind of give you an idea of how large this mission was and what we were able to do with it. It's over 100,000 square feet of logistical room in that warehouse. That's a shipment of water that came in from Anheuser-Busch, went straight into the warehouse and straight out to all the people in Hurricane Ida. That was the footprint of it.
On rows of supplies, you'll find a space in the back of the warehouse for training and large meetings. This multi-purpose room has enough seating for 50 individuals and is used to support warehouse operations as well as logistical meetings and emergency management training. Additionally, this area serves as a peak site for MEMA. If our headquarters in Pearl is compromised, our continuity of operations resumes here, along with an alternate 24-hour state warning point. In addition to the warehouse, the building also has 10,000 square feet of administrative office space, consisting of 21 offices and 17 cubicles. This office space is occupied by members of the CLOC staff, the Office of Mitigation, and the Office of Individual Assistance. Currently, 39 MEMA employees are staffed at CLOC, along with many disaster reservists to assist in the operations of the warehouse
than ever before to respond and assist Mississippians whenever a disaster may strike.
You probably would have wanted to hear Mallory's voice the whole time and not mine commenting on it. But COVID-19, our mission, today, we're going to come in and we're ask you for about $12 million for MEMA. And that's to respond to the state's emergency of the COVID response. This money is for salaries for the folks we had to hire to run the warehouse and our maintenance and utilities. We hired over 41 new employees. And we've also, we have a current rate of about 31 disaster reservists that come in and help us part-time on that delivery mission. You're going to see in a few moments in that handout, you're going to see a lot of numbers in front of you. But here's how the state's emergency logistical operations center supported you. K through 12 institutions of higher learning. We are still delivering as of this week PPE to those locations when they need it. That they can't get it and we can. We've got it in stock now. We maintain a stock of 60 days of emergency supplies there to be able to handle the need of the state. The Department of Health had a small warehouse about 25,000 feet. That was not gonna do anything for the COVID response. It just wasn't big enough. It did not have the capabilities. It was hot. There was no heat. There was no air conditioning in the building. And we all know in July and August of Mississippi, those rubber gloves melt together. The face shields, they melt together. We had to find a location that was air conditioned, that was good enough to be able to last those supplies as long as we need them. The food supply chain, we gave PPE to the fish and poultry industry. Keep that up and running for the people of the state of Mississippi. COVID-19 testing and vaccination sites. We mobilized tents, we mobilized generators. We set up hotspots for internet to be able to do the vaccinations, to be able to do those things all over the state of Mississippi, along with the Department of Health and the Mississippi National Guard. Proud to be a prior member of them, and we knew what they could do if we asked them to come to the fight, and they did. They did a great job. Small businesses, we supported them, and at one point during this whole response, about 75% of all the PPE that we were buying, purchasing, and distributing throughout the state was bought from businesses in Mississippi. So we were helping keeping that Mississippi look, keeping it running the whole time. We had some businesses that retooled their processes so they could actually make masks for us. We were purchasing children's masks, also purchasing enough masks that every person in the state of Mississippi, we distributed at one point out to the 82 emergency management directors of the counties and the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians to give everybody at least 3. And then also to have those child's masks so they could go to school as well. That was the unicorn we looked for a while, but there was a local company in Mississippi that retooled their equipment and was able to make that happen for us. We were able to distribute that through the Department of Education out to those schools that needed those. While other people were laying folks off, we hired that 41 additional staff to meet the needs of the state. Our public assistance grants goes right back into rebuilding the communities. Our EMPG, we received about 1.5 million plus up on our regular emergency management performance grant. That goes directly into the 82 counties. That is to assist those emergency management directors, their staff to be able to handle the things. At one time, we overwhelmed them and they were like, stop, no more. Our warehouses are full. We can't get it out fast enough. And that's where we mobilized the disaster reservist program and helped them manage. And we had 9 districts. We had hub and spoke wheels that we ran off of it. We went out to all the hospitals in the areas, all the schools in the areas, and it was a very effective program. Along with the Mississippi National Guard, they did a tremendous job doing that. Can't thank them enough. We also publish, and we don't manage, but FEMA manages it, and that is the program for funeral assistance. Right now, you've got 3,500 plus people in the state of Mississippi that have applied for those benefits, and FEMA has distributed to them over 23 million to help them with funeral assistance over this past year. We've spent about $185 million in the COVID response, and we're working to get those monies refunded back to us through FEMA. We're processing those projects just like we did in every other disaster. We currently have 20 open federally declared disasters, item making number 20. COVID was 19. During this COVID event that we've worked for the past 2 years, we all remember the little snowstorm that came through, Hurricane Zeta, Hurricane Ida. We continued to work all the way through those as well as support the COVID response. Without the ARPA funds, we're going to be forced to dip into the state coffers and into those state funds that are more diverse. We all know that when the federal dollars come in, there's a specific lane, a specific breadth, width that you can only do certain things with it. We want to preserve that right and not dip into those state coffers and be able to use some of the ARPA money for that. Our efficiency and the warehouse efficiency that we have would diminish greatly if we weren't able to do that. We're asking that you continue us help to be successful. MEMA has been very successful. It's only because of the support that we've had from this building and the people of the state of Mississippi and the other state agencies that have been working on it with us. So this time, I want to close out by saying that if not MEMA, invest in infrastructure. I've heard other people come up here, infrastructure. We dealt with the city of Jackson's water problem along with the Department of Health and others, sewer, water, other things, broadband. They're all high priorities. Every one of them are high priorities. But when a hospital doesn't have PPE, which is the highest priority? We're asking for what I think is a small sliver to get us through this next. We've got another variant coming out of Africa. We don't know when it's going to hit the continental United States or if it will. That's not a scare tactic. That's just a fact. That's something we have to live with. I love being in Mississippi, an open state. We are very good at responding to disasters at MEMA. That's what we adjust. There was no roadmap for COVID. There's not a roadmap for COVID. Where the finish line is, we don't know. I know that I get a flu shot every year. It's a different flu shot every year because of a different flu coming in, right? So we've got to stay prepared. We've got to stay on top of it. And that's what we're asking at MEMA to be able to do. And that is to be able to stay on top of our game, respond to the needs of the state of Mississippi, all the citizens. I've said it from day one when I took over the job about 9 months ago, and that's people, people, and people. I've got to have the people in place, the MEMA employees to do the job. And we're going to serve 82 counties and the band of Mississippi Choctaw Indians. And then from there, we're going to serve the citizens of the state of Mississippi. There's a misnomer that some people think that the 82 county EM directors work for MEMA. They don't. This is a home rule state. They work for their counties. But I just spoke at their convention last week, one of them, and we talked about all the things that we did together. And part of this CLOC, the State Emergency Logistical Operations Center, is one of those high water marks. When I look at other states, Region 4 for FEMA, the Southeastern Conference of Disasters is what I call it. I mean, it's all hurricanes all year long. So when you look at some of those other states, they had the same issues that we had, but we jumped out. We jumped out. We were the first one to get a warehouse. We were the first one to organize. We were the first one to get a shipping system installed. We're the first ones to actually put those things out there. So very proud of what we've been able to do for the state of Mississippi. We want to be able to continue to do that for the state of Mississippi. I feel for the group that went in front of me. I do want to put in a bid on that emergency operations vehicle. I think she's going to get rid of, because I think I could put that to good use. But they did do a great job during Hurricane Ida and others out there. We have partners. MEMA does not do it alone. The National Guard, Mississippi Department of Health, the group that came in front of me, getting people back into jobs quickly as you can. That's what it's all about. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Colonel. Appreciate it. Questions? Senator Parks.
Thank you. I think your accomplishments, they're astounding, and we appreciate your, the leadership through this. And hopefully it will calm down and be no major hurricane.
This isn't wood. I'm going to knock on something wood before I leave.
I understand. But as I look at your request, salaries are commonly reoccurring. Utilities are commonly reoccurring. So I guess I'm questioning those two. And I know you have on the utilities, you've got 2.5 years. It's kind of frightening to me what happens after 2.5 years. I guess I'm just questioning some of that.
That's a great question. I have a great answer.
Okay, good.
Crystal Thompson is a CFO for MEMA. She's been with me since about 2017. We argue about money every day. And we came up with a plan early on when we looked for this warehouse, because we knew the state of Mississippi had to have it. I mean, if it's not under my control, that's great. I mean, I'll give it to the Department of Health tomorrow and would love for them to take it, but that's just not their function, but we do it. We do it very well. So we looked at our federal grants and some of our programs. You saw in the video, finally, when Mallory's voice came up, she talked about mitigation. and individual assistants, 2 offices that actually I have federal funding for those salaries for those full-time individuals that actually work there. As we're working through COVID, this is one of the few disasters ever in my life that there's no end date on it. It is still open. This disaster does not have an end date. So everything that I am procuring, everything that I'm moving, everything that we do, there's no end date on it. I can still file for reimbursement tomorrow as well as today. So this is, we have a plan for minimalistic times when they come, but that's when we don't have to have the drivers. We don't have to have the delivery staff. We don't necessarily, we've got the stock in, we're rotating it out with other state agencies to make sure we have fresh stock in there, that it doesn't expire. So we do have a plan for the sustainment if we're not allowed to use some of the ARPA money to extend our state funding that we get a match off of through FEMA through our regular funding.
And I have one other question. If you could just elaborate a little bit on the COVID-19 contracts at 2.3 million. Is that for PPE or is that?
2.3. Yeah, I'm gonna let Crystal dive down into that one.
Currently, we have contracts with delivery services. Since we lost the guards support in July, they were actually doing deliveries for us. We have warehouse workers, which some of the warehouse workers that actually pick and pull the PPE is included in the salaries. But our warehouse workers don't necessarily always do the driving to all the individual counties. So we have a contract with the delivery service, and then we also have a contract with a company that does our inventory. For us to be able to get reimbursed from FEMA, or to hopefully ensure reimbursement from FEMA, that they don't argue with us about it, we have inventory. So we can track every mask that came in. It's tied back to a purchase order, and it's tracked to what hospital it goes to, what county it goes to. And I'm sure you can understand, we did not have that when COVID started. And so to get that was such a advanced system was rather costly. So those are the 2 that make up the 2.3 million contracts.
Okay, thank you.
We've
Love the
learned our
enthusiasm.
lesson from OIG, the Inspector General's office. They want to see things from cradle to grave. I've got a signature of the person that received it in the warehouse. And I got a signature from the person that got it at the forward location. We've got it tracked. But that's one of those things that we had to ensure that we had, because we wanted to go through smooth. We've been doing this for a little while with FEMA and with OIG, and we kind of know what they're going to be looking for on the backside, as the auditor talked about the other day.
Okay, thank you. I'm done.
Thank you.
Senator Williams.
Thank you. Do appreciate the enthusiasm very much. The $5 million is non-reimbursable. I assume this 12.9 ask is all qualifies for the ARP money. Is that correct?
Do what now? I didn't hear you.
The $5 million ask.
Oh,
What
I
we're
got it.
running into is there are some items that, and as you can imagine, when COVID started, FEMA has certain items that they deemed as the PPE list, what they would cover on the PPE list. Well, there are certain things such as like booties and hair coverings that the hospitals requested, that now they're starting to consider that they might cover that, they might reimburse us for that. So as this pandemic goes, and as we get reimbursement from FEMA and we request our reimbursements, that $5 million is kind of a cushion in case there's something that they deny. I would rather it hit federal funding as opposed to state tax dollars down the line. So that's what that request is for.
Okay, thank you. And this may be a simple question, but if we get the 12.9 here, it takes us through December of 24, right? What happens in January of 25 without additional funding?
Hopefully in January 2025, we're done with COVID. If not, what we will do is we will start hitting the federal disaster grant.
I mean, I assume we would downsize at that point. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Like he said, we did plus up approximately 41 to 45 employees. They're all time limited pins that, of course, we had to have. We will need some to keep some additional pins as far as accounting and so forth to get through audits.
Sure.
But hopefully in the next 2 years, we won't need as many warehouse staff.
So assuming things taper off, there is a ramp down plan. for
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I was involved since 2016, the ramp down plan from Katrina. And we actually started just, if you don't need them, then you just start taking away those employees. We have some retirements, we move them around. So we've done that with SPB a couple of times to be able to take that back down to where it needs to be. right sizing. Yes, sir.
Question, you mentioned earlier that FEMA owes MEMA about 170 or 90 million.
I'll call it 173 because it'll change tonight.
Okay.
And it's probably already higher than that because it changed this morning. I knew she was going to do that. I won't let her tell you the exact amount.
Okay.
So we are, let me find my proper sheet so I can tell you correctly. We're in the process of requesting as far as obligated numbers is what I was going to speak to. Find it. Oh, you have it right here. Good. Okay. So as of right now, we have certain projects obligated with FEMA. So that the data that we submit to them, we can draw down funds once they stamp their approval on it. As of right now, we have 167.9 million already at FEMA. And then we have another 91 million in the queue to be approved. We are fighting with, as you can imagine, 50 other states to get reimbursed. And there's only 2 centers at FEMA that's processing the reimbursements. So it is unfortunately slow. However, we are able to draw down some funds, especially for the medical staffing, excuse me. So that will be coming back into the state, hopefully within the next month.
And I would assume that you assume all those will be reimbursed. There will not be a hiccup there, that they all meet what FEMA needs to reimburse.
Yes, sir. And that got bumped up to it at one time. Joe Biden now has gone back and said it's all 100%. So everything with the COVID response, it used to be 75-25. Now it's up to 100%. And that's what we're banking on. And that's where the documentation unit and those other things that we purchased was able to make sure that everything is done. We play by the same rules, but then again, COVID is different. There's a lot more volume there. And Crystal alluded to it, 50 states and territories and only 2 processing centers at FEMA. You get in line, and if your stuff's not right the first time when it goes through, you get kicked to that stack. You don't want to be in that stack because it takes a while to get back in there. So we're making sure we've got every T crossed, every I dotted, just like we've always done. And so when first time it goes through, we're able to get that immediate funding, and we can do the drawdown to take the pressure off the state.
I will say one more thing. What we did prior to CARES funding going away, we reviewed some items that we had purchased and did a quick view to see if there's anything that, FEMA might not have approved at that point in time or would have even questioned. Excuse me. And we put that on some CARES funding. So hopefully we won't have much more, which is why we only requested 5 million for that. But you never know.
Good answer. Anyone else? All right. Thank you very much for being here and explaining. We appreciate the job that you did during the real hard work of it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank y'all so much. Good to see you.
Next is to presenter, and our last one is Mississippi Home Corporation. Scott, I believe you're here.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for coming.
Appreciate it. I have no ask, but the American Rescue Plan and the CARES Act did include housing programs, housing-related programs, and I'm here to provide you a quick update on those programs as administered by the Mississippi Home Corporation. The Budget Reconciliation Act at the end of 2020 created the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Mississippi received $200 million. Harrison County and Hinds County received their own allocations, and we're administering the balance of that, around $186 million. To date, we've distributed $75 million of that. That program provides 15 months of rental and utility assistance for anybody at 80% or less of the area median income in their respective counties. If that has helped about 15,000 families so far. If all of our backlog right now, that we're chasing documentation and things like that, if we do that, we will run through the balance of that allocation. The American Rescue Plan created what we call ERA2, Emergency Rental Assistance 2, in the amount of $145 million, and that expires in 2025. So emergency rental assistance is with us for the foreseeable future. The Homeowner Assistance Fund was also created by ARPA. Mississippi received $72 million, and that's for homeowners who became unable to pay their mortgages as a result of the pandemic. That one was a little bit different. Mississippi got 10% of that, so about $7.2 million went ahead and got sent. Treasury is requesting that states create a pilot, then submit a plan. Treasury will then ask questions about that plan. We expect them to start approving plans around the turn of the year. We've already got about 1,000 applications from homeowners that are already in process with our agency right now. In addition to that, Mississippi received $38 million in the Home Investment Partnership Grant. Just to give you a sense of scale, Mississippi gets about $8 million in that program every year. That is for gap funding for development that can do wraparound services. We also we have a balance of about $8 million in Emergency Solutions Grant, which will provide rapid rehousing for the homeless and homelessness prevention services. So all that to say, and I'm happy to answer any questions about anything housing related or any of those programs as they're currently running. This is probably the first time that, I've been with the agency since 1998 that we've had more resources than demand right out of the gate. Usually we're begging for housing dollars at the federal level. And these are really well-funded programs that we're managing on behalf of the state. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Senator Parks.
I'm excited to hear that we had the 200 million. My question would be, you said you had a backlog. How many employees do you have working for you currently?
Okay, so right now we have about 100 contracted employees working on this, over 40 hours a week. Just for a sense of scale, the entire Mississippi Home Corporation is about 65 to 70 employees on any given day. And we've got under contract with a couple of full-time employees, about 5 full-time employees at the agency, over 100. So this is probably the largest effort that we've put forward towards a grant.
Okay, so in any of the funding that you're asking for, does that cover for those 100 contracted employees? I think all of us at this table would like to see that backlog completed.
Oh, no, we're working through it. Yes, absolutely. Treasury requires certain documentation. We have adopted every single personal certification that they'll let us do, whether they certify that they are income compliant, that they had a COVID hardship, that, a lot of people don't have a formal lease document. We've shortened the window that Treasury allows us to shorten to 30 days of income if they're not unemployed. But the fact of the matter is chasing down that documentation, because we do have to paper the file, is what's holding us up on a lot of those.
Okay, and I guess I just didn't hear you or didn't understand clearly. What was your total ask?
None.
Wow.
I'm not asking for anything. It's all covered in the grant. I was just updating you guys on the on what the program, how the programs were running.
I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss something there.
Nope.
Unusual to hear that. Anyone
Thank you.
else? Questions? Yes, Senator Butler.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Are you now having problem meeting the needs of the people that all you need? From what I've heard in my district is that there have been individuals that have not been able to ascertain the funds available.
So I hear what you're saying. And so at the beginning, yes, absolutely. We've engaged with a lot of nonprofit partners, housing counseling agencies, advocacy groups, and held our own in-person events where we'll go around. Our first one was in Jackson. We had like 1,300 people show up to the Trade Mart to do in-person events and walk through it with people. we're always looking to work with more local groups to be able to do that. In the beginning, after running the hardest hit fund program for the state for the past 10 years since the Great Recession, we had hoped that online applications would be good because we have to manage everything on the back end. We learned pretty quickly that's just not going to work. You got to meet people where they're at. So we've got a paper application. We just revamped that paper application in coordination with a lot of our nonprofit agencies so that we're no longer speaking in jargon and we're speaking the language that people are used to hearing. We're just trying to simplify it. Absolutely. If you're hearing from people in your district, please reach out to me. We want to be able to help them. A lot of our in-person events that we hold around the state, they start here. They start with a legislator, from either the Senate or the House calling me and saying, I want to hold an event in my area, and get together with the neighboring counties and have an event where people can come and we get volunteers and everything. Those are some of the best applications that we get. A lot of the backlog that we have is because people will start an electronic application and then either abandon it or have problems uploading documents. They don't have access to the internet. Sometimes they just get confused. We've actually had people upload pictures of their dog instead of their lease, things like that. And we want to help them. And so we've got all these people constantly reaching out, trying to reach people, but in person is the best way to do it.
Okay. Now, with social organizations.
Yes, sir.
Are you working with them to try to enlighten the individuals in the area?
We are.
Yeah.
Every chance we get. I don't think there's a single organization that's wanted to partner with us to either hold an event or do outreach or accept applications that we've turned away. Anybody, this is, when I said that this is going to be with us through 2025 on the mortgage side and the rent side, we still need, more community partners, and we're signing people up all the time.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. This will conclude today's hearings. We will have about the same list as far as number goes tomorrow morning, beginning at 9 a.m. We'll look forward to seeing everyone here then. Thank you.
Thank you.